Hey there, welcome to my channel. This is Kat of Kat's Culture Counter. This is going to be a podcast discussing the foundation of culture in the United States. Now, this is a podcast, so what's so lovely about it is you can watch it and look at the photos, or you can just listen as you're driving or cleaning or whatever you're doing. And I wanted to just say thank you so much to my 14 subscribers. Hopefully, we'll have more signing on, but I thought I would do um, a little bit of a history of the culture of music and the instrumental actual foundation of the pioneers of different genres of music. And the fact that there's a narrative out here kind of disconcerting because it's housed in untruth and it's housed in ignorance. And many of the things that we hold near and dear in the United States, people of African descent have been instrumental. So before I get started, please like this video, share it with anyone that you think might find value in it, and subscribe. Now, let's do blues. And so, there's a lot of music that we listen to nowadays that blues is just the meat and potatoes of the whole, like you're talking even like Tori Amos and Kate Bush and all of these like musicians and bands that have utilized blues not only in their pop music, their alternative music, but also in their rock music. And the first person that I want to talk about, his name is William Christopher Handy. Now, he was born in November of 1873, and he passed on March 28th of 1958. He is an American composer and musician, and he refers to himself as he referred to himself as the father of blues. And there is legitimacy to that. And he was a very, very influential songwriter in the US. Now, he is not only someone that you need to know, but he's someone that you need to be thankful for this genre. Now, he made blues popular when whether people doing sheet music, vaudeville, before blues recordings of the 1920s. Okay, so that's where he's like around and doing this thing. You might hear some thunder going, but we'll see if we can get through this. Okay, so and I should say he was from Florence, Alabama, and he passed away in New York. Now, he was the son and grandson of Methodist ministers. So he was surrounded, I am sure, by gospel music. And he was educated at the Teachers Agricultural and Mechanical College in Huntsville, Alabama. Now, ministers, musician. He went against the tradition of becoming a minister, and he began to like go after his passion, which was music, at a very young age. And he played a few instruments, including the organ, piano, and guitar. Now, he was really skilled on the cornet. Did I pronounce that right? Cornet and trumpet. But he also played those other instruments. So he was a multi-instrumentalist. And so it gives you, when you are like housing all of these different sounds in your mind and you're trying to express something, it gives you a pathway to express it more fully when you have those other instruments. Now, during this early period of his life, he was like steeped in the music of the Mississippi Delta and of Memphis. And so he began to arrange some of those tunes for his band performances. Now, of course, kind of difficult to find a publisher for his songs, you know, as he's beginning to write and find his footing. But he turned around and he formed a partnership with Harry Pace, and they founded Pace and Handy Music Company. Now, that later changed to Handy Brothers Music Company, but that was the original name. Now, he went from ragtime to jazz, and then during this time, he was drawing on vocal blues melodies of like African American folklore, because you know that the blues is housed in that. Enslaved people finding a pathway from their native Africa to be able to kind of treat the hurt, pain, cruelty that they were experiencing, they would sing about it and they would come together in that way. And that was like, if you think about blues and where it came up, but even before W.C. Handy, you know that the blues was originally, because I guess you could say W.C. Handy was like a little bit after, but originally was slavery, enslaved people. Who, if you don't believe that, I don't know. I do not know what to tell you, because if you can't see how that could come to be from their daily experience, blues, and the need to, sometimes you just got to let it out. Because if you don't let it out, you're going to harm yourself internally, like your mental state. And it's very hard to find an avenue out when you're dealing with that internally. So they would do that. And you know, it's not just happening in the fields, it's happening in the homes, it's happening around these people as they're allowed to be able to do it, because you know there's probably some pushback with that, because there always is. But he did with the Memphis Blues, that was published in 1912, and then the St. Louis Blues in 1914. Now, with this is a little bit more melancholy, and the use of the blue, like seventh note on the scale, because if you listen to blues music, you'll hear a lot of chords that are very similar, right? Rearranged a little bit, but it's pretty, like there's such a thing as blues chords. You hear those chords and you know it's blues music, and that was finding its housing there. Now, he issued some anthologies of African American spirituals and blues. That's called Blues and Anthology, and that was in 1926. And then he also had a collection of Negro spirituals, and that's 1938. Going to add to that A Treasury of the Blues, 1949. Now, you see Negro spirituals, because you think about, not only do you think about gospel in the sense of Black churches, and it stands alone. When you go to a Black church and you hear gospel music, that stands alone. It is a different type of music that like moves even people who do not subscribe to religion. They hear gospel music and it touches them. And so he was a person that recognized that and brought that into his repertoire and his writings. So what do you think, W.C. Handy? Does it make you want to learn more about him? I tell you, when I was researching and learning more about him, I was really impressed with his, like, because you know, I am not, I'm not a stranger to thinking outside the typical boundaries or guidelines or box that people try to put you in. And I thought that he, deciding that he was going to do something different other than going into ministry, I applaud him for that. And as far as the bringing it away from slavery and making it like in a written form and putting it more, making it more accessible to more of the masses, W.C. Handy definitely was that person. Let's move on to the next. Oh, this is a good one. This next one is Charlie Patton. He was born in April of 1891 in Hinds County, Mississippi. And then he passed April 28th, 1934 in the Heathman Plantation. If you can believe that. It's a plantation commissary in Mississippi. And I tell you, I was learning about this dude and I'm just like, wow. And seeing pictures, he's reminding me of the next gentleman I'm going to talk about. But when he's sitting with his guitar and he's like, his whole aura in the picture remind me of Robert Johnson. But let's talk about Charlie Patton. He spelled his name Ley. Okay. And he was an American Delta blues musician and songwriter. Now, he was considered by many to be the father of Delta blues. Because you remember, I was talking about WC and Delta blues, but this young man was known to be the father of that. He created this like American music that inspired most Delta blues musicians. So if you mention Charlie Patton, they're going to know who you're talking about. They're going to recognize that name because there's certain musicians, you hear their name and it's almost like royalty. And this was a man that was just that. There was a musicologist, Robert Palmer. Now, he considered him to be the most important American musician, one of the most important, can I get that out? American musicians of the 20th century. And he was well educated for that time, right? So it's funny that you think about that, right? Where you're like, for that time, he is well educated, because a lot of people probably they probably only had like a few years of schooling, right? Before they had to help out in some way. But okay, so he was born in, we're going to get to his biography now. He was born in Hinds County, Mississippi, as I mentioned, and he spent most of his life in Sunflower County in the Mississippi Delta. Now, there's been questions about his parentage and race because you look at him and it's obvious that he's got more melanin, but he definitely has, his features are a little bit, ambiguous, right? But they're saying that he was fathered by a slave. So, because his parents were Bill and Ann Patton, but they believe that his father was the slave Henderson Chapman. So several of Chapman's children became popular Delta musicians, like the Mississippi Sheiks. So you think about that, and it's like he's had melanin, but he was light skinned and he had like what they said Caucasian features. So, but the one drop thing was in play, and so he was considered African American. So it wasn't like he could pass. Do you know what I mean? How people would pass. But there's a few musicians, like Howlin' Wolf. Now he said he was Mexican or Cherokee, but everybody pretty much agreed he was black. But they said maybe he's just white or native. Some believe he had a Cherokee grandmother. So like he was Choctaw. It's just, there's some there's some questioning around it, but um, all that matters is that he was considered a black man because that was the time. Now his family moved in 1897 around 100 miles to a 10,000 acre dockery plantation. Now it's a cotton farm with a sawmill, and that was in Mississippi in Ruleville. That's where he developed his style. Now he was influenced by Henry Sloan, but because Henry had like this new unusual way of playing music, and so that's what he kind of leaned into. And it's like you come in and he comes in and he forms his own like slant on it, and that's what became the blues. Now he was a Robert Palmer, who I mentioned, the musicologist, he described Patton as a jack of all trades bluesman, means he played deep blues, white hillbilly songs, 19th century ballads, and other varieties of black and white country dance music. All of them he played well. So he played across the southern U.S. and he performed annually in Chicago and Illinois, and he performed in New York City in 1934. Now, unlike the other blues musicians of his time, he played scheduled engagements at plantations and taverns. So that was kind of cool. And he gained popularity because he was a showman, and he would play the guitar down on his knees, behind his head, or behind his back. Now, who did that? Jimmy, right? Jimi Hendrix. Now, this guy he was only 5'5". So he had a gravelly voice, little guy, but his voice was really loud and carried. It amplified about 500 yards without amplification. So just naturally, it was that. That's wild thinking about that, because, you hear project, 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 and this guy could do it naturally. And he influenced Howlin' Wolf. That's pretty cool. Like, I mean, I'm learning all of this, and I'm just like, these people are or were so fundamental to the music that I absolutely love. Now, Patton, he had a tumultuous relationship with Bertha Lee, which that was his common law wife, recording partner, and they were both incarcerated in Mississippi. And of course, that fight was harsh, but they got bailed out, and then they were escorted to New York. And that was his final, that would be his final recording sessions on January 30th and February 1st. And it returned to Holly Ridge and spent out his final days with Lee. Now, the death certificate says that he died of it's like a heart problem. It's called mitral valve. It's a bicuspid valve, or left atrioventricular valve. It's one of the fourth heart valves. So that's what he passed from. And I'm not sure why I'm telling you that, but I do want to tell you that his imprint and his contribution to the blues art form, the blues genre, was instrumental, and it influenced many musicians from what you just heard, right? Okay, so let's move on to number 3. We're still in blues. All right, the last one in our blues section is one of my chief influences as a musician. It is Robert Johnson. Everybody said he made a deal with the devil to be so good. But I tell you, talk about someone just sparking and coming to life and leaving an imprint. This dude was like, just I don't even know what to say because I just like absolutely love this musician. Let's learn a little bit about him. Okay, now he was born May 8th, 1911 in Hazelhurst, Mississippi. He passed away August 16th, 1938 in Greenwood, Mississippi. Yep, 27 Club. 27 Club. So his full name is Robert Leroy Johnson, and he was an American blues musician and songwriter. Now his singing, his guitar playing, and songwriting was on his, like, you'll hear some recordings 1936, 1937 of him, and the gravel of it and the timbre and the, I don't know, kind of like, for me, it aches a little bit. It calls out to you a little bit. It questions a little bit. And he's definitely one of those musicians you have to listen to. If you've not know Robert Johnson, you need to get on that right now. Seriously, get on it right now, because Robert Johnson is one of those people that you need to know about. And don't let the opportunity to learn about him pass you by, because you'll regret it. Now, he was born in Mississippi, as I mentioned, dirt poor, and he achieved worldwide renown because of the fact that people were saying, this guy can't play a lick on the guitar. Came back. That's why he made a deal with the devil. Came back and was playing like he was possessed. Okay. So I want to tell you, it's funny thinking about it. Okay. Now, he recorded 29 songs between 1936 and 37 for the American Record Corporation. Now, they released 11 78 RPM records on their Vocalion. I always want to make sure I pronounce it right. A label during his lifetime, and then one after his death. Now, some of these tunes, they're enduring themes. People just, of the genre: Crossroad Blues, Love in Vain, Hellhound, On My Trail, I Believe I'll Dust My Broom, Walking Blues, and Sweet Home Chicago. Now, he dialed in his craft on street corners and in juke joints, and talking about the rambling about being lonely and romanticizing about that, writing songs about that existence, right? Of being lonely, which, hello, it's the blues, right? So he was super intense, and he had expressive vocals, and he was excellent on the guitar. And I tell you, I'm going to back up here because I need to tell you the story about Johnson and how they think he made a deal with the devil. Okay, this is going to be quick. Okay, because he was like a young, struggling bluesman, in Mississippi. And they're saying that he met the devil at the crossroads at midnight and sold his soul. Okay, because this is what they thought. They thought he was like a poor, notorious, he was terrible on guitar. But after disappearing for a short time, he returned, and it was awe-inspiring, almost superhuman, to be able to play complex blues chords when he could not play well. Because it was a short time. Because you usually say they're you play for 10 years, 10 hours a day for 10, no, you pay for 10 years. I'm trying to say 10 hours for 10 years, but you pay for 10 years for whatever hours to master your instrument. And they're it was a short amount of time. He came back and it was how'd that happen? They're like, is that Robert? Is that little Robert? And he's like playing like he is like on fire. But I tell you, it's definitely something that you should kind of like read. There's all these different like stories and myths and like legends about it. We even went to a museum where they had someone playing, and he was in character, and he was Robert Johnson, and had him like making his deal with the devil. It was very, very interesting. It was like the um, blues, rock and roll, was it blues museum maybe, that we went to. I'll put it on the screen, the exact one that we went to. Now, I should go back to his young years because he moved to Memphis. He They joined his father, who had to change his name because he was being like chased out of town by white landowners. And so with his mom, Julie, and his father, Charles, even though Robert was born out of wedlock, they say that he was fathered by a plantation worker the name of Noah Johnson. But they decided after a little bit, they went, when he's about 3 or 4, they joined him in Tennessee. So Memphis, Tennessee, and that's where his eyes, like his world, they just opened up. And so that's where he attended school, and he discovered popular music. And that's when he learned to play the guitar. But like I said, he was not too good at it, but he still had that music bug. And he was like more interested in that than like working in the field. Now, he married Virginia Travis at 19. And just a year after that, she died during childbirth. So he married his second wife, Coletta Craft. She too passed away within a few years. But things happen. Things happened. But one of the earliest accounts of like Johnson when he as a musician was done by Son House, and he first encountered Johnson around 1930 in Robinsonville, Mississippi. And he recalled that Johnson like blew a harmonica like he's pretty good, but that he wanted to play guitar. His guitar skills less than stellar. That's what House said. And he said that it was like such a racket you've never heard. Get that guitar away from that boy. He's running people crazy with it. So then, 2 years later, now, the thing about it is, because there's this myth about him, and I know from my own experience as a musician, like I didn't play guitar, but I'd sung and wrote music, like as far as lyrics and things like that, and always had kind of a melody in my head. And when I got to be 25, I was like, I think I want to start playing guitar. And I picked up a guitar, and then it was just a natural thing for me. And then I started adding on different instruments like piano and different percussion instruments. And that just was something that just came to me. And it's not, I am self-taught, so I do not read music, but you put one in front of me and I can make a beautiful melody. Now, my son, during COVID, he said he wanted to start playing the bass. He was playing it for, I don't even think it's a month. We did a taping for him to attend an academy, arts academy. He got in. First year, he went from the lowest, not even be able to handle a bass, not knowing chords, not being able to read sheet music. They had to explain to him how even to hold the bass upright, because he was learning on electric before he was there. That's what he auditioned with. And within a year, he went from the lowest to the highest level. And what it took for him was playing constantly. We got home from school, playing constantly on the weekends. We'd get home later. He'd go in his room and he'd practice that upright bass, upright double bass. And he's a gigging musician, started gigging when he was 15 years old. So I know it can be done. If you have the passion for it, it can be done. So there's the myth that it's like, what's going on, and he's pretty talented. So, and he's attended music school. But that's just giving you an idea of sometimes it's the timing of it and it's like meant to be. And so maybe it was just his meant to be time. And he just loved it so much that he just probably just went and he was just doing nothing but playing the guitar. Because so when he came back, they were just like, okay, what the heck happened? They were like, he was so good. When he finished, all their mouths were open. House said this. All their mouths were open. So then he's touring around and he's performing across the South in all the different blues spots, Chicago, New York, Detroit, St. Louis, all of that. And he usually concentrated their concentrated gaze or look at one woman in the audience. That's risky because if she's with a man, that's going to be an issue. But that's what happens sometimes when you're a passionate musician. You may do something that may not sit well with some people. Now, the mystery surrounding his death. Now, this is like, it was his final recording session was in 1937. He was performing around Texas. He's being accompanied by Johnny Shines. They played like juke joints, parties, dances, things, just like they always do. And then before heading back to Mississippi, details they don't know for sure, but they say that he spent some time in Robert Johnson spent some time in Memphis and Helena, Arkansas. Why am I saying his full name? I don't know. But his death wasn't reported for 30 years. And without a formal autopsy, they're left to speculate. So that's adding more to the myth of what happened. But someone's saying that he flirted with a woman at a party, possibly like the store owner's wife, and was poisoned by her jealous husband. That's what they're saying. But that's a mystery because other people say that he suffered from a genetic disorder. So maybe we'll never know. But that's it on Robert. That's my blues section. And I really hope you enjoyed this portion with Robert Johnson. And stay tuned for part 2, which will be jazz. If you found value in this podcast, please subscribe, like, share with someone who might find value. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.